Thank you for listening to Lone Star Community Radio. This program was broadcasted and recorded live from the LSCR studios in downtown Conroe, Texas. Lone Star Community Radio is supported by listeners like you. Donate and sponsor today. For more information on getting involved with Lone Star Community Radio, contact us at lscrstudios@gmail.com or visit us online at www.irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and guess what? You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour. I want to thank you right off the top for taking the time to join us live or listening to one of our video cast. And before we go any further, somebody reminded me that they didn't really understand, but the show itself you can watch as well as listen to. Go to Facebook Live and look for the Weekly Business Hour, punch in the 9th of September, 2024, and you will be able to watch us as we discuss the business challenges of today's world, among many other topics that we touch on. So we're broadcasting live this morning from the Lone Star Community Radio Station. It's located here in Conroe, Texas, right inside the City Hall. First floor of City Hall is where the studios are. This is just, as I say every week, more or less, a great place to be in business here in Conroe, Texas, Montgomery County. We're just north of Houston, Harris County. If you're not living or listening to us in the local, that's where we are, and this place is booming. I saw a new survey the other day that said that Conroe was the 7th fastest growing town and city in the country, and 4 or 5 out of the 10 were Texas. So Texas is growing, Conroe's growing, Montgomery County's growing, so we get a chance to talk about business and how to grow your business, a big topic for us. This is the Weekly Business Hour, and Montgomery County and businesses worldwide have joined us today. We're broadcasting, I think I counted one time, 7 or 8 different time zones are listening to the program. But this is where we come together once a week from 11 to 12 Central Time and talk about business news, ideas to improve your business, and have conversations that we hope will be beneficial to you and your business. So we try to keep our topics broad, if at all possible. And one thing I want to remind you at the beginning of the show, and I might remind you once or twice before we complete today's show, but if you have a question, if you have a thought about the show, if you have a question about your own business, drop me an email. I love to converse with people. We have a mailbag segment from time to time where I'll answer a question on the air. So let me know what you're thinking about. Let me know what you're thinking about this show, but also about your business. You can reach me at Rick, R-I-C-K, at irlonestar.com. That's Rick at irlonestar.com. Well, I'm going to get right to the business at hand. We have a wonderful guest for you today, and I'm not exaggerating in the least. Mr. Hank Moore is joining us again today. He is what I consider the best friend of the show. He brings so much experience, knowledge, background, working with businesses literally all over the world. Big businesses, small businesses, medium-sized businesses. Hank's a corporate strategist, business advisor, a mentor, and a Pulitzer-nominated author. How many times, Hank, have you been nominated?
7.
7-time nominated Pulitzer Prize-winning author. So he's a writer. He's written a number of great books related to business, no doubt about it. Hank, welcome back to the show.
Always a pleasure to be back. This is like home, coming back every year or two. It's been about 2 years ago. The last time I was here, I didn't really talk about business, although it's a big business sector. I talked about the entertainment industry, which is one of the top 10 business sectors in the world. But that was my book, Pop Music Legends, But today we're back to talking about business. Next to me are my 4 books that were big picture of business, book 1, book 2, book 3, and book 4, all of which were released individually. And now they're being re-released as a set, a budget set, an entire set. They were written as a set. A lot of people didn't know that. But my original plan was to write 3 of them. And I took material, some of it was material that had been in 2 of my earlier books. One was called The Business Tree, and one was called The High Cost of Doing Nothing. And I took some of the material out of those books and updated them, because you always have to put in fresh case studies and examples and new things that you're doing. And now with the re-released set, there's even more additional material included that may not have been in originally. Nothing in business stands still. Although sometimes the old concepts can be redusted off and given new coats of paint and new fresh ideas, and then they become new ideas again, which
Yeah.
is something I learned from the music business, which is forever changing.
You know, you talk about change in business, and that is one of the things that I personally, as a previous entrepreneur, started, bought, developed, and sold a number of business in my career, is change. And my feeling, and I think a lot of other people, is the change seems to be taking on more and more motion and motivation and quicker, and it's just like a wheel. It gets spinning a little faster and a little faster. How do you see the change that takes place today in business? Is it picked up speed? Is it the same it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago? And what impact does that have on us as business people?
It gets to be exponentially faster. I mean, right now, the research tells us, Harvard Business School research tells us that change, the average person and the average organization change at the rate of 71% per year. Now, my question is, are you going to make the change for the good, or are you going to be the victim of it not changing? Because a lot of people fight change. That figure, that 71% figure, used to be about 30. Things didn't change, but they continue to change now. And they have to. And it's not just about technology. It's not about, sometimes the change isn't for the good. One of the chapters that I wrote in one of these books that was a really hard one for me to write was about how people bring their poor behaviors into the workforce because they weren't treated how to behave with corporate etiquette. And by default, some of those bad behaviors become the corporate culture for the company. And the company doesn't do well. And right now, there's all kinds of research out there about the effects of the pandemic on business. You know, a lot of people love working from home, but they forgot their corporate protocols. And if they don't use them with each other and the people they work with, they don't use them with customers. And not to mention, education. Everybody hears about how education suffered a setback due to schools not being held during COVID. So we're still playing catch up from that aspect, and some of that was in the Purple Book, book 4. But anyway, there's always something new around the corner. The secret is to be able to keep your eyes open for it.
Well, you mentioned, kind of back up just a second, you mentioned the impact, say, of COVID. Really kind of a devastating, not only to the individuals that were affected physically, but to the economy, to the world, to every aspect of life. My impression is a lot of businesses just made no plan at all on how to work going forward on the other side of COVID. They just came back to work, unlocked the door, turned the lights on, slowly dragging their employees back into the office in many cases, at least what I read. But there was no strategic plan or a way forward because, as you mentioned, we're still in it 2 years later, and it's a 5-10 year Maybe it's a generational thing that we have to go through for all the effects, the negative effects, particularly of COVID, to kind of wash through the system. What's your view on it?
I think so. You know, which is funny going back. I had to go back and reread it because, as you know, I'm on several books past these now. But in book one, the original one in the series, I wrote a history of financial crises and what they did and how they set things back. And I reviewed the Great Depression. And then I reviewed the Y2K debacle. And a lot of it was brought on by the technology industry because stocks were swirling for companies that weren't making products, that they were selling based on potential. And then the more recent economic downturn of 2008, 2009. In my professional opinion, and I think I said it on this show 3 years ago when we were doing that one show by Zoom, I thought then, and I still think that 25% of those businesses that went out of business during COVID should have. They weren't prepared to make it anyway. COVID was just a convenient excuse.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said. I know a lot of small businesses where the owners were within a 5, maybe 10-year, maybe less, of retiring, of selling their business or closing shop or
Sure.
whatever, took the opportunity of COVID because they hadn't planned, and there were so many pressures. You know, the supply chain just fell apart, so it was hard to get supplies. Employees, hiring new employees that can't come into work. I mean, all kinds of challenges, and a record number of businesses just closed. And a lot of them closed where they were really setting up to be sold, but just the aggravation, I guess, people got tired and they walked away literally. I talked to a friend of ours, Rich Hall, about that situation earlier this year when he was here and was kind enough to be part of the program. But that's a phenomena. And like you say, 25%. Because now we're still seeing large businesses that are suffering from the effect of COVID. I read this morning that it's called Big Lot Stores, a chain of, thousands of employees.
Right.
And it looks like they're going to go into bankruptcy and perhaps go away, as so many things have. So
Well, and then you get into the subject of restaurants and the hospitality industry. That is, the restaurant industry has been traditionally the shall we say, the most speculative and at the same time the weakest business sector. 90% of all new restaurant startups are never going to make it. Never. They think they are in their mind, but it takes a lot more. Most restaurants don't understand that 60% of what people are coming there for is not the food. Only 40% is the food. The rest of it is the ambiance and being treated well and knowing someone, someone like Johnny Caraba's mother is going to be sitting by the front door greeting each and every customer. I used to beg Nympha Lorenzo to do that, and she didn't. And the last time, but it's just, it's really sad that people squander opportunities. And the number one opportunity is to muster and retain customer service of all kinds. And yes, if the workforce is being reconfigured now and you've got younger generations, that's true too. Right now, we used to say that we had I used to say at least, not everyone believed that. I used to say we got 5 generations in the workforce now. Now we have 6. And each of them have wonderful aspects of their business upbringing. Some of them have some out-of-date aspects about their business. You know, customer-focused management has been the dominant management style now for 25 years. A lot of people that are still stuck in the captain of industry style of management have never heard of customer-focused management. So part of what I have to do and feel obligated to do from time to time is to remind people there really are some great opportunities out there. One can't get dour and down and feel bad. When you were talking about succession planning, that's something that most companies never think about, of who's going to succeed when. And you have to, when I work with a lot of companies. I mean, people go, oh, you've worked with all these great big corporations. Yes, I have. And some of them were bears to work with. It wasn't, they didn't always live up to their famous names. But one of the things that I love about small business is the average small business principal wears about 10 hats every day, and they're really good at 8 of them, which is 7.5 hats more than the average corporate mid-manager ever gets exposed to. So the idea is to do something about it, to realize, to empower the next couple of young generations. The main generation, it's not just it should never be, well, back in our days, and you know, like the old song, the old Broadway song, Kids, what's the matter with kids today? Why can't they be like we were, perfect in every way? What happened to kids today? That was from a musical called Bye Bye Birdie. And I'm not here to talk about showbiz today, but it's, we make the assumption that change is not always for the best. I make the supposition that change is always for the best. And you can look back at some of the things from the good old days, dust them off with a new coat of paint. That's what I call lessons learned but not soon forgotten. So when I was, in fact, some of the things we're talking about are from Chapter 1 from the Green Book, Big Picture, Book 3. People kept saying, you've got all these trademark concepts and you use all these and a lot of them are your own. And Peter Drucker used to say, heck, most so-called business experts don't have any original concepts. They steal from each other. And Mr. Drucker he was a friend. I first met him in 1998 when I was inducted in the U.S. Business Hall of Fame. And that was not my first Hall of Fame, but I had been inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame before that by Sonny and Cher and some others. And the original one was when I was 19 years old, and I was put into the Texas Business Hall of Fame by Governor John Connally. And he turned to me. I said, do you have any advice, sir? You know, we were at the ceremony. He looked at me and he said, kid, get used to wearing a tuxedo. You're going to be doing that a lot in your life. You say that to younger people now. Now, dress codes aren't quite what they used to be. But in the day that if you were going around winning awards and doing things, you wore a tuxedo. That was long ago and far away. But it's just, there's so many great opportunities. And we can't just say, oh, things aren't great. And COVID was terrible. No, COVID was a learning experience for a lot of people. And they really, one of the things that I do, and I think I've talked about that on the show from time to time, is I'll go in and people say, well, you know, you work with these big companies. You wouldn't meet one time with a small business and give us an overall analysis of what we're doing. I go, yeah, that's an institutional review. And because you want to look at what they've already done, what their marketing people tried to sell them, which didn't work, or what their accounting firm told them wrong. And, you know, you want to look at, you know, my goal is not to put down niche consultants, it's to build them up, to say, you know, if you had used these marketing people for this, this, and this, you might be better off. What about a customer service prong to your strategic plan. And of course, and I'm the one, as you know, when I was on the book on the show talking about my book Nonprofit Legends, which was my second Pulitzer Prize nominee. That was book 9. I refer to them by their number internally. And what we're talking about today is books 10, 11, 12, and 13. As a set. But you've got some great opportunities out there. And all they have to do is be acted upon.
Share a quick story with you along that line. Last week I read, it actually was an obituary. To me, it was a story about an individual who made his entire career, which was just amazing, by doing exactly what you're saying. He was known, and this is what they wrote his obituary about, of looking at a business opportunity, looking at an industry, and finding a niche, something that could be grabbed onto, whether times were good or bad, and then build on that. And he apparently was part of at least a half a dozen successful businesses that were created because he was a visionary enough to see that, hey, let's do this a little different way or that or whatever. And It was very interesting. But that was 80+% of the obituary of this man, and the memory that people have is his vision, his ability to see opportunities. The old chicken salad versus the chicken, but it very interesting.
We lost one of the greats recently. It's been maybe 4 years ago, Lee Iacocca.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew him. I actually worked with him. I actually advised him on something, and that was what a joy. He was the guy who could schmooze anybody and everybody. And there's an art to that. I call those outside CEOs. Most CEOs tend to be inside CEOs. And when you hear about certain companies getting in trouble, without naming names on the show, such as energy providers, for not being accessible to the public, that's because they're functioning as inside CEOs. They don't know what it's like to do that. So Lee Iacocca, in his later years, taught charm classes for CEOs and how to stop thinking like a bean counter and start thinking like a guy that. And part of it, I asked him that. I was asked when he took over Chrysler. I was one of his advisors, and this few years ago. But I gave him one idea that he just loved, and I said, "What did you hate most about Henry Ford when you worked for him?" And he said, well, he was very difficult to deal with, and he didn't want anyone coming up with fresh ideas. And I said, but everything I know about you, sir, is you want everybody who works for you to come up with fresh ideas, and that's what freshens up the company. He said, yeah. He said, how do I properly thank them, was his question. And I said, I looked over on the desk, and there was a stack of note cards, just plain old index cards sitting on the table where people would write down ideas, like the Blue Notes concept, where we, in the old days, used to tack creativity on the walls in a strategy session, right? And I said, instead of just writing corporate stuff on these note cards, why don't you write something about what you're grateful about for employee A, employee B, employee C, and go down on the assembly line. He said that's one of the things that he hated the most about Henry Ford when he worked for Henry Ford, and Ford hated the fact that the Mustang was Iacocca's idea. And Iacocca hated the fact that the Edsel was Henry Ford's great idea, because he named it after his son Edsel Ford. And as we know, the Edsel bombed, and the Mustang became an all-time favorite forever. And so I said, What would happen if you walked on the assembly line with a group of note cards and you go up to Joe or George or whoever on the assembly and you say something about him within earshot of other people? And that's where the idea came from. In today's world, really good CEOs walk around with that information on their phone, and they'll dial it up. I understand here, Fred, your daughter just got a scholarship to so-and-so. Can I give you a few dollars to add to it? Whoa. And it was proven that the productivity would double by the employees. And sometimes the productivity can do more than that. One of the statistics that I used when we were talking about nonprofit organizations, the little small business who they go out on the weekend and the employees wear the company T-shirt in a fun run, that will triple their loyalty to the company, and they'll be less likely to want to leave anytime soon, especially to leave with trade secrets. So there's always opportunities to get people to be a little more proud of where they work.
It's amazing to me, and you said it at the beginning of that piece there. These ideas, concepts are right there for people to pick up and choose and utilize. And so many, whether you call them an inside CEO or just plain dumb, I don't know, and build their business. They're there.
I know.
It's kind of like marketing. I quit studying marketing at one point not too long ago. I said, it's the same old. It's rehashed, but the basics are still there, and really haven't changed the basics. Yeah, got some new advertising ideas to plug into the marketing and whatnot, new communication lines, et cetera, but a lot hadn't changed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're to where we need to take a break. I hope you'll stay with us. And when we come back, we're going to continue this conversation with Mr. Hank Moore, author, which is one that I didn't include when I introduced him. He's the author of a number of books that are used even in business schools. So please stay with us, and we'll be back with you.
Car enthusiasts of Conroe, FM 104.5 and 106.1 Lone Star Community Radio invites you to shift into gear every Monday from 1 to 2 with Cruising Car Club Talk with Robert and Randy for news on all things automotive in the greater Houston-Conroe area. Can't make a live show? We've got you covered. You can find all of our uncut content, including full episodes on Spotify, iTunes, Play Store, YouTube, Facebook, and irlonestar.com. Again, that's Mondays 1 to 2, Cruising Car Club Talk with Robert and Randy. See you there.
Every Friday, tune into Texas Ticket on Conroe's 104.5 and 106.1 FM with Armando Nino of Gold Lake Conroe, focusing on Montgomery County area events and places. Get a feel of the Texas spirit at the event, paired with guest and vendor interviews, event coverage, and ticket giveaways, and so much more. Join us Fridays and punch your Texas ticket. For more information on the show, visit irlonestar.com/Texas Ticket.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to the Weekly Business Hour, and I'm Rick Schisler, Silver Fox Advisor and the founder of OneBestConsult.com. And today we're really, really blessed to have Mr. Hank Moore in the studio. And we've been talking about business concepts, his 4 big picture business books, which are now available as a set. It's a great opportunity to really work your mind over, as I call it. It's almost, I have this thing about working my mind, keeping it active, but to develop an understanding of business concepts that in many cases can help you in your business. Even though you're a small business, big business, small business, they share a lot of things, and don't be afraid to adopt or adapt to things that are coming our way. Also want to remind you that the entire show will be available on Wednesday of the coming week, so that you'll be able to go back and re-listen or share it with someone you know that might benefit. You just need to go to the radio station's website, www.irlonestar.com. Click on the morning shows, and it'll pop up, and you can click and choose some of the most recent shows, of course, with this show at the top. So please do that. When we went to break, Hank, we were talking about the concept of acceptance, inside, outside CEO. I had to laugh though internally about not getting out and realizing hands-on what the business is. And you were the story of Iacocca and Henry Ford II. I mean, it just, I can't imagine, as a former entrepreneur, small business guy, grew up in a family business, that anybody would own a business today and not get out and communicate firsthand with employees, customers. I don't even know why are you in business if you're not willing to do that? But one of the things that I get asked a lot, and we touched on briefly, was COVID as an event, like AI now as an event. We're 2 years past COVID. You and I discussed that it may take a generation to, wash everything out of the system, with some hopefully good things sticking moving forward. But the idea that people looking to the future, again, our latest kind of opportunity, the way I look at it, is AI. And I read something recently which I agreed with the author, that AI has reached its peak, not meaning that it will drop off suddenly or anything. It's just found its level for the time being, as far as business is concerned.
It's no longer the new fad that
Right.
people talk about,
And
nor are bitcoins.
Great
Right.
analogy there. But what are your feelings? I mean, AI for business, as far as the perspective for business, I know a lot of small businesses have done nothing to reach out and try to gain an understanding where they might be able to utilize it in their business to make them more efficient, more profitable, lower expenses, retain employees, and so on and so forth. Where do you think we are right now in the business world with AI?
It contains a lot of the elements that have been here for a long time, but people never thought of it as that way. For one thing, it gives people an opportunity to put out more communications to more different constituencies. Think of it like, instead of one newsletter fits all, be able to send different comments to different communities. One of the things that I frequently ask clients to do, and I've had about 6,000 over the years, and I love working with small businesses. They keep good archives when the corporations don't. Then the more you access those archives and then reuse the material from them, that's where AI can be used. It can also help in your marketing. It can also help with your customer satisfaction surveys, all of that. There are ways. It doesn't have to be thought of as something that the technology industry is forcing on other people. It is a way of seeing, for example, the last time I was on the show, we talked about the music industry. Having a good AI program to tell what influences on a song are potentially suspect for a libel lawsuit. There were, big name singers have been sued because some lines from another song were in their head and they turned up in another one. That's something where AI can spot check where the opportunities to mess up would be. Same analogy as looking at a theme or a report to see what percentage of the content was plagiarized. So there we have that. I have been doing variations of that for years didn't use the term AI. One of the things that I believe is people need to determine what their comfort level with technology is and which technologies. I call that lessons learned but not soon forgotten. That's one of my trademarked concepts. And what that is I keep file folders of really great ideas, who I submitted them to, how they didn't pay attention, and that was so I do a lot of it manually. The AI program can speed some of that up. You know, the AI could say, well, companies in the XYZ fields did this, this, and this. What went wrong? What can we in our extra field learn from it? And so that's what I call lessons learned but not soon forgotten. You know, when I work with companies and we're putting together our strategic plan, and one of the first things we look at is how our competitors messed up. And if you have AI, you can get a more detailed, roster of what went wrong and what they tried and so you can learn from it. You know, I have another concept called 3 rights offset a wrong, which is a flip of that old phrase, 3 wrongs don't make a right. People would say that in a sarcastic. And I would say that there are more opportunities around than most companies know what to do with them. That's what 3 wrongs offset a right. And there's more good stuff. I've talked to thousands of CEOs who will say, oh, these people that work for me, they're so headstrong. They have so many great ideas. And I go, and that's a bad thing? No, it isn't. It's a very good thing. Why can't you learn to see the people working for you as the fountain? They're the outside employees. They're so there's opportunities to inventory the ideas, your own ideas. I have been known when I'm working doing studies of companies to say, I give out a survey to the people, and I call it the mentorship survey. What are the top 10 things you ever learned in your life? Who did you learn them from? What was your age at the time? What was their age? How have you adapted that? And get them thinking beyond. There's always next levels. That's what the AI program. Yes, there are opportunities for it to be abused. AI shouldn't be writing songs, but they can also inventory what's going to red flag something that's going to keep you from a libel suit. Our friend George Harrison got sued by the authors of the song He's So Fine, and they claimed that he plagiarized it and it became My Sweet Lord, in later years and was a big hit. And he was sued for that. And AI today has restudied the content of the songs He's So Fine and My Sweet Lord. And no, they can't, it's too long. Statute of limitations has run out. They can't overturn the libel lawsuit from 1976. But the AI helped prove that the influences were far beyond one song to another.
It's interesting. Where I see, in a general sense, the AI situation is utilizing it to be original, for you to originate content, to write a song.
And replicate it.
Is the area that is a gray area. It's an area that's fraught with potential pitfalls. Using AI, though, to check work, to do things that becomes a true tool, kind of like the typewriter instead of handwriting, or the computer instead of the typewriter. These are improvements. But when we step off and try to generate concepts or predictions, there's been for an example, and I just shake my head at my profession of attorneys in the law. and where attorneys have gone into court. And obviously, with your smile, you've read some of these,
Yeah.
and have produced documents and presented, and the cases that were referenced were all done by AI. The attorney did nothing,
Right.
Or his office, did nothing, and the cases aren't even real. The citations are just bogus, and it gets caught. And talk about embarrassment.
Yeah, we want to guard against that because,
Well, that's
all the attorneys I know are honorable and ethical and talented, and they don't want to be brought down by one sloppy piece of research by an associate.
Just pretty amazing, Hank.
Yeah.
Well, kind of moving on from AI, because I think it's a good tool, right? But it's
It's
got
one of many
pitfalls
tools.
when you try to use it to originate or develop ideas, concepts, writing, speeches, whatever. The human factor must lead in any effort like that. Let's talk about the future. You're a corporate futurist, strategist. You've always, in my opinion, since I've known you for a number of years, had a good handle on what's over the horizon, what's coming, say in the next 5-10 years, in general for businesses, the opportunities as well as pitfalls. We're here in 2024, going into the fourth quarter, so we're looking at 25 and beyond. What do you see as 2 or 3 of the main challenges for businesses as we move into the next year and beyond?
Well, one of them, which is a variation of what I've been saying for years, there's 4 ways to grow a business. You sell more customers, you cross-sell existing customers, you create new products and services, or, and I like that 4th area best, you joint venture, and you're going to start seeing new and different. And that's one of the good things, I say good things, that happened in COVID, opportunities that presented itself as a result of COVID was people were having to find new partners in new markets, and many of the new kinds of services evolved from that, of knowing that no one company can do it all. Now, the other area that I would suggest is there's going to be a lot more mergers and acquisitions, and some of them are going to be unexpected kinds of things. If we've all had friends who had businesses in a certain industry, our dear friend Bill Spitz in the pest control industry. And I said to him 35 years ago, well, you could sell your company to someone else, or you could think of a different way to do it. We could put together a bunch of honorable, ethical people like you and sell it as a roll-up. So that's what's going to start happening. The other thing to look at is the generational issue. There's some, the older generations we call knowledge workers. There are a lot of people that are wanting to come back to the workforce because they can be utilized. And through Zoom and other formats, that's a good way to get them involved. And so sometimes the best work teams can still be built multi-generational, where they can learn from each other. And as I've told you on the show before, I learned that the best mentors are not necessarily old codgers that have been around the block one too many times. They are young people. And when I was mentored at an early age, I was taught, let me teach you what I've got. Now, the next one's on you. Teach us. So there's going to be more of that. The more we could get the youngest generation, with Generation Z coming up, and then the next one coming up after them. I mean, there's some great opportunities for them with their fresh approaches to absorb the knowledge from the older folks and then to turn around and reteach. I think there's going to be a renaissance of younger people being the next mentors for the next business era.
Well, and it's important, as you and I both know and really believe, is the mentor, a good mentor is just worth so much to a business. it was funny when I started this show 10 plus years ago, and I was inviting local entrepreneurs, people, small business owners from all kinds of business, restaurants, this, that.
Sure.
And I kept track of the ones that utilized a mentor. It was sort of a standard question I would ask. 95% of the people that came on the show there for about a little over 2 year period, utilized a mentor to help guide them in their business.
The really good people do.
And that was where I ended up. Is one of the results was they were solid small business owners that most likely would succeed as they went on down the road, and that correlation just showed itself, and it was pretty amazing. Plus, I was so pleased that 95% did have a mentor.
Well, but see, that's the good thing. Well, on that mentorship survey that I was talking about, when you ask someone the top 10 things they've learned that they utilize regularly, this is not useless stuff that they forgot. But of the top 10, you're going to find that 2 to 3 of the top 10 things that they utilize every day are things that they learn from formal mentors. Then the next couple or 3 is going to be things that they learned from observing people that they did not consider mentors, but were unexpected sources of knowledge and wisdom. Some of them might have been competitors. Some of them may have been people they didn't particularly care for, but they just told them. I mean, I remember one of the things I learned from someone that I thought was kind of a mess up, said, well, you sometimes teach people the things you more recently learned, and it's not when you learn, it's that you learn. And then you get into what a lot of, probably another 3 out of the 10 top things that people utilize are things they were self-taught. They might have absorbed all of these lessons from reading books, and that's another subject. People don't read like they used to, sadly. But they've got to learn from the right sources. People get a lot of their business education not from this show. Let's just say they visit websites of people huckstering services. Those are not authoritative sources of information and wisdom and ideas. And so the secret is to get that mentor. Also get an objective person to come in and do an overview, a study of what you're doing right and wrong. I think you'll find that 3 rights offset a wrong. That's the way it usually works out. Things that you may not think you're doing so well, you're doing very well. And I think there's going to be more of that in the next era of business.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that some folks that I've met and in fact worked with some of them just can't see it clear to have someone come in and look at their business and critique it. And the value, they don't see the value. And to me, it's that old thing, another set of eyes, looking at something. My father was a big advocate of that.
And another set of experiences.
Right.
And again, I have all those file folders of ideas that went over people's heads the first time. Sometimes they land better with another client.
Yeah, there's no
Not
doubt
that
about
you're selling old ideas, but you're smart enough to know, and going back to the AI thing, where you can inventory what were the ideas that were so far ahead of their time that the people couldn't see it.
Right.
And I've given a few of those ideas out. I gave a little idea to the Disney Corporation, and there were people who did not understand that. I said, you've got 2 100th anniversaries coming up, that all of your marketing for the next 25 years needs to be centered on those 2 anniversaries. Oh, really? What are those 2 anniversaries? The 100th anniversary of Walt Disney's birth and the 100th anniversary of the founding of this company.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's an interesting company, but I won't go there.
Yeah.
Well, Hank, we're about out of time today. Always seem to be short. I always very much enjoy your conversations, as do our listeners from the feedback I get. Tell us about the books. You've got the 4 books now available in a set. Where can people go
Well,
if they're interested
I
in
have
purchasing them?
I have a special email if people want to contact me. It's just a book email to the book. It's hankmore456 at gmail. Now, but they're going to be going in bookstores at the end of the year. But essentially, these books originally sold for $40, and they're selling it as a budget set for $50 for all 4. So, and then I'm sure there'll be a little less than that ultimately a year later on Amazon. But people can get that, and because there's a lot of new material in there. But it's just sometimes when I was writing these over a period of years, as you know, I was doing a second set of books because research tells us 0.1% of all authors ever get out of their lane, but my lane is both business and entertainment, and sometimes the two do meet together, but anyway, that's what it is, and for those who are interested in getting signed copies of all of those, it's hankmore456 at gmail.com.
Well, thank you so much. And as we close
And they'll
out,
be in the stores by the end of the year, but that's the end of the year.
right, if you want to get one now directly from Hank, and as he mentioned, a signed copy, copies, I should say.
Of the set.
And these books originally were $40 a piece.
Right.
So basically, $160, you can get them all together in a special set for $50 total.
And
So-
at the end of the year, they'll all be, sealed in a bookstore. But, we don't call that bargain books. We call it a body of knowledge. It's the only, as it turns out, the only encyclopedic business series on the market.
Yeah.
That's why they had to reissue it.
Well, I've read these books, and I encourage you, if you want to have a better understanding of your businesses and where things are, where they've been, just a lot of great knowledge that I would encourage every business owner to embrace. Reach out and get the Big Picture of Business collection. As we close out today's show, Hank, I got to mention one thing, and then we're out of time. You brought back a memory to me earlier in the show, and I've got to share it. You were talking about Mama Caraba sitting at the front door greeting her guest. I grew up in a family business, as you know, and my grandfather stood at the front door and greeted every customer in the first store, the store he and my grandmother first bought and developed. Fast forward 20, 25 years, and there were over 250 of those stores. So he embraced, as an individual, his job was to greet you and direct you to someone to take care of you, and it was interesting. So I grew up being a believer of the concept. Congratulations to the Carabas and all the businesses that bring those special touch. Well, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for joining us. Thank you, Hank, for sharing a bit of your knowledge and experience. Next week, ladies and gentlemen, look for us live at 11 o'clock on Monday right here on irlonestar.com. And again, look for a video podcast of the program on Wednesdays so you can re-listen or pass it on if you would. Appreciate it. And until next week, stay engaged this week, and always, always keep your focus on what counts in your business. Thank you.